We'll be starting the webinar in approximately 1 minute to give some time for more people to attend. Good day. My name is George DeMarco, ESX Chair, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's 2012 ESX Experience webinar called Diagnosing and Solving Central Station Problems. We have a great event today that is sponsored by Bold Technologies and features Morgan Hertel of Rapid Response Monitoring Services. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available for reviewing this week on esxweb.com. Today's central station is more technologically advanced than ever before. Unfortunately, that sometimes means technical problems can arise, from telecom issues to network and software problems. This webinar will help you understand how to diagnose and solve many common central station technical problems, including telecom difficulties with receivers, signal format issues, IP and firewall complications, database glitches and backup strategies, and more. We'll have time for questions and answers at the end of the event, so please submit your questions in the questions window on the right-hand side of your screen. I'd first like to introduce Bob Bishop of Bold Technologies to deliver a few remarks about his company. Bob?
Thank you, George. My name is Bob Bishop. I'm a product manager here for Bold Technologies. And Bold is very excited and proud to sponsor this webinar today, as well as participate in the ESX coming up here in June. Just a little bit about Bold Technologies. We're actually celebrating our 31st anniversary this year. So we were established in 1981. Two of our founding partners are still very active in the company. So we are a very well-established company and really focus on the central station automation software. We currently have 50 employees, or a little more than 50 employees, consisting of development, implementation, support, customer care, marketing, and sales. The vast majority of them are located here in our Colorado Springs office, which is our national headquarters. But we also have an office in Europe that services Spain and a number of the European countries. And we also have some distributors that are marketing our product worldwide. One thing very quickly to point out is we also have 1/3 of our staff is devoted to the development. So we are very much focused on research and development of our product. We've also experienced 40% customer growth since 2004. So we're continually adding on and boast one of the fastest growing customer bases within our vertical in the central station automation software market. Something else that we're very proud of is the fact that we've won the Maximum Impact Award for central station automation products for the last 3 years, 2009, 2010, and 2011, mostly for our media gateway products and some of our telephony type products to, again, help assist in troubleshooting some of the problems, complex business requirements that central stations have. Bold Technologies has 3 different products that are core to its application and that we offer to our customer base. 2 of them, Manitou Lite and Manitou CS, are available for full-service central stations, also for wholesale monitoring centers, those doing third-party monitoring, and proprietary national and regional control centers. We've also introduced in the last 6 months our Manitou PSIM product, which is available to more of the proprietary market to handle facility or cluster-level control centers so that you can create a hierarchical structure to the monitoring facility, to military and defense contractors, to utilities, transportations, and other video monitoring centers. Something that, again, we're very excited about here with the ESX coming up are 3 of our new products that we've entered for this year into the Maximum Impact Award categories. One of those is our BoldNet mobile app. And this is designed to really take dealer access or technician access to the next level by allowing them to access Bold or the Manitou software from a variety of different applications. As you can see from the picture there, we've actually tested this on a number of different products ranging from your iPad, iPhone, Androids, Windows mobile devices, BlackBerry, Nook, Kindle, HP touchpads, just a number of different devices. And we're very excited about launching this here and having that as part of the Expo coming up in June. The Universal Connector is another product that we're very excited about. Again, Bold Technologies is focused on creating tools that will allow you to manage a number of your complex business problems that you have in the central station. And one of them that a number of customers have come to us about is being able to convert other signals or other messages into alarm signals within the system. So we've created the new Universal Connector Module for our media gateway that will allow you to accept messages coming in through SMS text messages, email, database monitoring, FTP, TCP, through a number of different products and actually parse those in as regular signals within Manitou. Now we can actually attach those to just create a simple alarm. We can create GPS information so that we can present that up on a map and show you essentially geo-coordinates for that particular alarm that's coming into the system. It's also a way that we handle a lot of video and audio alarms that are coming into the Manitou system. Again, a very simplified way to do that, not lock you down to any specific technologies as you're going through the system and creating them, but giving you a toolbox to create and monitor a number of different technologies out there. Now, the other thing that we're debuting at the ESX Expo here is our social media monitoring module. And this will allow dealers to offer a way to monitor Twitter, Facebook, and other social media networks for any type of activity that may be going on. A great example of this is the Olympics coming up in London. We have a customer in the UK that is using this particular product to monitor around all of the different venues to look for any type of tweets or posts that may be coming in that have GPS information attached to that as far as where their location is, and just monitoring for any malicious activity. One of the things that we've noticed is a lot of different organizations are starting to use Twitter as a way to get means out to create a flash mob or to get participants involved. And by offering the social media monitoring, we now have a means to monitor that, look for anything that may be malicious or dangerous, and present that as an alarm to an operator as well. The last thing here that we're excited to show is our Bold SOS, which is a mobile GPS-based PERS device. Actually takes it to the next level. And we've done this in partnership with My911 to create a mechanism that not only allows you to create, again, a mobile PERS alarm into the system, but also to monitor for things such as impact of vehicle, airbag deployment, even walking and falling can be monitored through the accelerometer in the GPS-enabled device, such as a smartphone, to go ahead and create an alarm and pass that into Manitou. So there are just a number of different options here that we offer from this mobile app that will really, again, be a new revenue stream for a lot of central stations. So we do invite you to stop by at ESX. We'll be at booth 411, and we would love to show you these products here that we've just kind of highlighted today, as well as any of our other core applications, and talk to you about how, again, we can help create any solutions to a number of problems that you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob. You did a great job, and thanks to Bold for sponsoring today's webinar. Let's bring in Morgan Hertel of Rapid Response for the presentation. Morgan, you're up.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, George. Okay, greetings, everybody. Today, as George said, my name is Morgan Hertel with Rapid Response Monitoring and the Vice President of Operations out here. Sitting in Syracuse today. It's weather's actually nice and warm and sunny here. Today we're going to focus on a couple, three areas, just to sort of wet your whistle for what's coming in Nashville. We have a very limited amount of time for these things, so we can't present everything that's out there, and that would be in the full presentation. So this is just a bit of a teaser today. And we're going to talk about three very specific areas that are common issues either within the central station or when supporting dealers or customers out in the field. And the three areas we're going to talk today about are browsers, the problems that we get with browsers, some of the ways that we can resolve them, some of the common receiver problems that we run into, and a little bit of information about how to diagnose and how to get started with solving some of the issues we have, especially on dial-up. And then lastly, we're going to go over a couple of just very common network issues. As I said, there'll be a whole lot more once we can, do a face-to-face in ESX, but this will get the ball rolling. Go ahead and change the slide. Okay. So within an internet browser today, if you think about it, we access so much today using a browser, whether it's online banking or it's online security access to our accounts, whether it's your customers that are accessing web portals or your dealers that are accessing web portals. Just about everything we do today outside of our own little world, and in many of our cases we're using browsers to actually monitor with, use some kind of browser. And there's a variety of browsers that are out there in the market today, and we're going to go over a couple of the pros and cons on some of those browsers a little bit further into the presentation. One of the things that we run into is some common browser problems, and we're going to go through those, like clearing the cache and compatibility mode, tips and hints, what to do with Java, and then Internet Explorer versus some of the other browsers that are out there. Can you go ahead and change this slide? Okay, so let's start with one of the more common things that we end up doing here, which is clearing a cache. And what that means, what browsers do is that as they collect information from the websites, is they actually store them locally on your local computer, and they do that for speed. So common things that are stored and cached are things like images. They could be passwords. They could be cookies. They could be different binary files that are cached locally on your drive. And one of the things that will happen is as websites get updated, as they get changed, what will happen is that the browser will try and use a locally cached file, and it'll have a conflict with what's going on with the actual website. So it's like having two different versions of the application that's trying to load at the same time. And one of the easiest ways to fix that is to clear this cache. And we probably do here at Rapid, we probably do 10 or 15 of these a week, where customers are calling in, have weird problems here or there, and they could either be dealers or they could be end users. And it's very simply, especially with Internet Explorer, is to clear the cache. In the case of Internet Explorer, which is the Microsoft browser, probably the most commonly used browser only because that comes on every Windows system today, it's a pretty straightforward process. You can go to tools and options, and depending on which browser it is, it's either a drop-down menu across the top, or it could be the picture of the little gears on the right-hand side of the browser. And you'll be able to go to tools and then to options, and then you'll be able to delete the browsing history. And one of the things that's kind of interesting about Internet Explorer is that when you do a delete like this, it deletes everything. It deletes your cookies, it deletes stored passwords, everything. And you can't do it by time range, it just sort of does everything. Go ahead and change the next slide. Chrome is a little differently. Chrome is a fairly new browser. It's very fast. It was developed by Google. And one of the things that Chrome allows you to do is you can actually now do some selectivity on what you're clearing. So maybe you only want to empty the cache, but you want to continue to maintain your browsing or download history, or maybe you just want to clear safe passwords. And you can also do this by time. So in that example there, you have a drop-down that says from the beginning of time, which would be forever, or you can also go back and say just delete the last little bit in an hour, or give me the last month. So you can now selectively clear those items in Chrome's browser. Firefox has a little bit different. It's more similar to Chrome. I didn't give you an example of it, but the idea is the same, is that by going and removing all those older files and then letting the website completely refresh, you can, it's sort of a fresh start and a good cleanup, something good to do. It'll also clean up a lot of extra space in your drive. If you haven't done a cache clear in a while, you could have potentially a significant amount of data that's saved in these caches, and that can be everything from images to videos to audio files, all kinds of stuff will start to build up in that cache. Let's go to the next one. One of the other things we run into a lot, and this is particularly true with older websites, and that is that some of these older websites, they don't necessarily work well with the newer browsers. And so you'll see things like columns that don't line up, or images that are out of place. Sometimes the images will cover up data fields and things like that. We run into that a lot internally when we're working with some of our vendors' websites, especially if they're a little bit older. And Internet Explorer, because it's been such a huge problem with looking at some of the older sites, now has a compatibility mode button. And when you select that compatibility mode button, it kind of does a degraded version of Internet Explorer to allow you to view that old site. And more often than not, you'll see that straighten up that site. A lot like Windows Vista or Windows 7 that allows you to run a compatibility mode, an older program within the same newer environment. And Internet Explorer will do that. The other browsers actually do that on the fly. They'll actually go into sort of a compatibility mode all by themselves, so you don't have to manually do that process. The next thing we run into, and this is really true, especially with anything previous to, say, Windows XP, is that Java is not updated. And as you know, the Internet runs a lot of applications using Java. And Java is a programming language that's out there. And years ago, Microsoft and Java got into a significant argument. And so they actually stopped embedding Java on Windows machines, and now it's a separate installation. But also part of that separate installation now is the updates and the security patches and things like that. And many times we'll find systems that are so old that they're running really, really early versions of Java, and you need to update those in order to get your new JavaScripts to run right. And you'll see things like buttons that don't work right, or drops-downs that don't work right, or pages that are automatically resizing don't resize right. And many times just simply doing a Java upgrade will solve that problem. It's also really important to do that because of security issues. There's a lot of exploits that are in web-enabled systems, and you want to be sure that these clients are kept up to date. But one of the most important things to come away from this today is that you've got some choices now in the browser world. So as you start to either suggest what kind of browsers to use, or you use these internally, you've got some significant choices today. There's three primary browsers out there today in the world. Microsoft has their Internet Explorer, which has been around for a long, long, long time. The next one that's probably the most up-and-coming browser is Google's Chrome browser. And then you have Mozilla's Firefox. And Mozilla was the original group of people that sort of invented the concept of HTML and using a browser to look at that. It's a nonprofit organization, and so Firefox comes out of that as a shareware application that's supported by the development community. And each one of these browsers has some advantages. One of the bigger ones for Internet Explorer is that it's really the only one that does a decent job of supporting what they call ActiveX, which was, you see that a lot in DVRs and things like that, but it's an environment that allows you to run an application within a browser. And so if you're using anything at all that uses ActiveX, you're probably going to end up using Internet Explorer to do that. The next one is Chrome. Chrome is, as I said, is fairly new in the world today. Chrome is blazing fast. Google has done a really outstanding job of creating one of the fastest browsers you'll ever run into. Something that we use standardly here in our operation because it's significantly faster than anything else. The other thing that's interesting about Chrome and Firefox both is that it's supported on many platforms. So if you're somebody like me that uses Macs, or uses Linux, or uses Windows kind of all at the same time, we can run Chrome or we can run Firefox and have the same interface on all those machines. And in fact, within Chrome, you can actually link up and sync all your favorites and history and things like that from application or from computer to computer. You can now drag those around with you. The other browser that's out there too, which is probably not as common, would be Apple's Safari. You'll see that installed on any of the new Apple machines that come, or if you're using iPads or iOS devices, those are all using a variant of Safari. On the Apple platform, and you can run Safari on a Windows-based machine, although you certainly don't see that very often, but it is out there. I would say the vast majority of people that are using Chrome are using non-standard or non-Internet Explorer browsers are running either Chrome or Firefox. Go ahead and go to the next slide. I know receivers are a huge issue within the central station environment, and specifically when we start talking about voice over IP and things like that, and we could spend the entire seminar talking about receiver problems and how to diagnose them and how to fix them. We'll go into that a little bit more when we get out to ESX, but I want to give you a couple of hints, and we'll go through those here. Go to the next slide. We're all dealing with voice over IP at one place or another, and so typically what happens is that contact ID type signals will get decoded as another format. They end up starting as one account number with signals ending up on another account number. It can be quite a mess. We've all dealt with it to one extent or another, and we're going to go through a couple of the ways on the SureGuard application on how to read some of the printouts and how to combat some of these issues. The other thing that's worth mentioning is Bosch's most recent software updates for their 6600s that work on the newer line cards. They've done some additional processing on those to try and clean up some of this contact ID issues that we're having out there. And then SureGuard has also created some additional profile work for you. So now what you can do is you can shut down other formats. As long as you're not using them, you can actually create profiles that say only process contact ID, and those are in there. Let's go to the next slide. One of the things I wanted to do, because I get a lot of these kinds of questions at a personal level, people call me up and say, hey, you know, this happened, that happened. And one of the things I always ask them is I'll say, well, tell me exactly, you know, how did that signal get processed? And in many cases that I get the sort of deer in the headlights look. I get the long pause, and they're not really sure how to answer that. So one of the things I wanted to do today was go over how to read this actual printout that comes off these receivers, because there seems to be some confusion with that. And once you understand it, it's actually pretty straightforward, and there's some wealth of information that can actually happen here. And the first part of this is which line card processed that. That way, if you're dealing with a particular line card that's giving you problems, and it's only that line card, you can zero in on that line card. So as you start to have any kinds of issues, that's the first thing you want to look at. The next column I have is your DNS digits, which are the numbers that are coming off the T, so you can separate one account group for the next. But then where we really get into it is the next couple of characters that are in these parentheses. And the first one, the first two numbers, is the profile. And so that's going to be the profile that you have in the receiver that processed that particular alarm event. So now you don't have to go looking it up in a table and try and figure it out, see what it is. You'll actually be able to look at this printout and say, aha, this is where it was actually processed out. And then the next one is the one that seems to be the biggest question mark in everybody's head is, well, how did it decode it? And you get a lot of blank stares. And what SureGuard does in this on the newer receivers is that they will tell you exactly what format was decoded. So that in this case, if you're looking at the parentheses and I've got a 16 there, if you were to go look that up in their chart, and their chart has very close to 100 formats now as to how it was decoded, that would tell you that it was decoded as a contact ID format. But many times what we're looking at is a panel that was supposed to be sending contact ID, and we'll get that message and we'll look at that and we'll realize that it was actually decoded as SCOA, or maybe it was FBI 4x3 or Ademco high speed or some of these other formats. And if you know this information, then you know how to start to shut down some of the formats that don't work. So just a quick word on that is that by profile now, you have the ability to take a profile and turn off all the other DTMF formats, or all the other touchstone formats except the ones that you want. And you can either do it one of two ways. You can either selectively, or pretty close to selectively, turn on or off many of these formats, or you can also just tell the receiver only process traditional contact ID. And that's one of the ways that on the SureGuard receivers you can fight back some of the voice over IP problems, is if the receiver will only take one DTMF format and ignore the rest or act the rest, you won't get near as many mismatched account numbers and signals that end up in the wrong place. Let's go to the next slide. The other one that I find is an ongoing problem, and that is SIA and what to do with A's and zeros and spaces. And so within the SIA account number range, an installer can program A's in the account number string, and depending on the panel, sometimes A's turn into zeros, or zeros turn into A's, depending on how you programmed it. So we get account numbers where we're expecting maybe, say it's a 4-digit account number, and we're expecting 0001, and what you actually get is AAA1, or sometimes it's the other way around, depending on the control panel. So one of those common calls that we get is, hey, we're sending signals, but you're not getting them, and lo and behold, you'll find them in the unknowns, and that's where the installer is actually put in A's instead of zeros, or zeros instead of A's, depending on what he's trying to make up. We've also seen some panels that when you put an A or a zero, it just doesn't send anything. So you're expecting a 4-digit account number with A's or zeros, and the next thing you know, you got spaces. It actually took out the decimal point. So A's and zeros will get you into trouble. We get a fair number of those calls on a daily basis coming into here. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Really quickly, we'll go over some of the common network problems that we run into, and most of this has to do with premise information. So this is going to be what's going on with control panels out in the field and installers trying to program them. IP addressing schemes in many cases are just a complete mystery to most installation companies. They really don't have a solid handle on it. And so even though we'll give them all the various IP addresses to come to us, or the port numbers, they still aren't quite sure how and which number goes into which slot, or how all that works. And some of the common mistakes is we get calls all the time where an installer comes and say, hey, I need to know what your gateway IP address is. And that's because they don't understand that the gateway IP address is really the gateway on the local network. Or sometimes they'll put in the IP addresses correctly, but they'll leave out the subnets, and so they don't understand how that works. In many cases, they're not sure about port numbers, and if you're using stock ports, sometimes they'll leave it, but sometimes you don't always run stock ports for a variety of reasons, and so they don't know how to set the port numbers. We've also run into some routers that don't play well with systems that use the same port numbers as voice over IP. They're trying to handle that, and so we've got in here internally, we've got a whole list of router model numbers and depending on the particular brand of equipment, we may have them do a special setup on a router. But just to go over some of the typical IP addressing schemes that you see a lot in the field, I'll go through these with you just real quickly. Many times you'll see the 192.168.1. something something something. That would typically be an IP address of a device that's located on the customer network. And then if you're talking to one of the dealers or one of the installers out in the field, whatever they've got for a local IP address, more often than not, your gateway is going to be the exact same IP address, except it's going to end in a 1. That is a very normal network topology where you'll have the last octet just simply be 1, and that would be your gateway or your router on your local system. Subnet masks, you can go 255, 255, 255.0 and be pretty safe most of the time. Most of these home networks, if somebody doesn't know what to put in. And then, of course, you have your IP addresses that you use to take in the information from the central station, and those could be just about anything the central station is using. And of course, port numbers are whatever are usually either panel specific or they could be central station specific, depending on the application. And those are your 3 common mistakes that we run into. Obviously, there's a lot more. We'll get into some more of this when you get in the classroom. But that's what I brought for you guys today, to give you some food for thought to think about and to get the ball rolling. So, George, back to you.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Morgan. You did a great job. I just want to remind everybody that if you have some questions, please put them into the right-hand side of the screen. You'll see it there. We're going to start off, Bob and Morgan, with some questions. And the first one I'm going to do is, Bob, you talked about the browsers, but your personal preference, which one do you personally, the browser that you prefer using and why?
I'll go first if you want.
Yeah,
I
sure,
use Chrome.
absolutely.
I use Chrome for everything. And I use it for a couple of reasons. One, it's incredibly fast, but it's cross-platform. So I can use it on my Macs, I can use it on my Linux machines, and I can use it on my Windows machines. And because of the sync features, all my favorites, all my start pages, all my bookmarks, and everything all sync from desktop to desktop to desktop. And I don't have to think about any of that. It just works.
Bob, as far as Bold technology, does it matter what browser you're on, or is it just agnostic to all browsers?
Very good question. We are actually agnostic to the different browsers, especially with the new BoldNet Mobile that's coming out. It's completely developed in HTML5. You probably heard that one talked a lot, especially by Apple. It really bypasses anything Flash. And allows for multi-browser support, multi-device support. So that's one of the reasons why we went with HTML5 in that development, so that we could support even something as simple as the old-fashioned Kindle that has internet connection.
Great. And Bob, while you're still there, I saw your presentation where you're talking about all the different mobile devices and apps that you have. How easy it is to download those apps and start using it, and is it real time, or is there a delay in the process of using those tools?
Very good question. There are no special plugins or applets or anything like that that need to be installed. They will run natively in any browser. So if you have a smartphone, bring up, again, if it's iOS, your Safari browser. If it's Android, bringing up your Android browser. Or any of the other devices, it will natively work in those particular browsers. The other thing that we're working on is a specific wrapper so that it can be an app and a widget right on your desktop or on right on your Android or iOS device as well, so you can just click that and connect to it that way. As far as the other functions go, it is in real time. So anything that you see as it pops up on the screen is a poll of the real-time data within Manitou. And one of the other things that we allow for are changes to be made to the system. So it's all user permission based, but if a technician needs to change his zone description, you can give them that permission to go in there, change that zone description, and when they hit save, it's real time within our system.
Great. Thank you on that.
We do that too.
Go ahead.
We do a ton of, at Rapid we have a whole team of software developers here, and we do all our own public-facing web pages, all our own mobile applications, and everything is optimized to run in any of these browsers today. Trying to just focus on Internet Explorer is a real disaster. So like everybody else heading towards HTML5, getting away from Flash and some of the other more proprietary formats, because you just never know what you're going to have out at the other end. And nobody wants to try and diagnose weird stuff because of old browsers or old technology. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay. I'm going to throw this question to you, Morgan. It says, can you determine what partition the signal came from?
Sure. Yeah, so if you were to go back to that original slide where it had the little map, that had the little chart on it, under contact ID, if it's if you were to look at the data string, there's the account number, then there's 2 digits, and then there's 3 digits. The 2 digits that's in the center, that refers to the partition or the group or the area, depending on the panel and the terminology that they use. That's under contact ID. If it's C, it's a little bit different, but you can, if it's any one of the formats, it's a formatted signal, you can always tell what partition or what group or what area it came from.
And that brings me to a question that came in about how do you get a copy of this presentation. It's if you can register on esxweb.com. So if everybody can take that down at the end of the webinar, you'll be able to access that. Okay, the next question I have that came in is any suggestions on CI signals where the only thing received is the caller ID number but no panel data?
Sure.
Hopefully somebody can determine that. Okay, go ahead.
No, I can help you with that.
Okay.
And that's a very common occurrence. You'll get you get an invalid report depending on the receiver. So what that's telling you is that some panel tried to make a phone call. It tried to communicate, and for whatever reason, it was unintelligible. It was undecodable. It didn't like it. It didn't know what to do with it. So it basically hung up on it. Didn't end up on the wrong account number, but it got thrown out the window. And hopefully, the panel will call back and it'll work the second round. And more often than not, that's caused from voice over IP, noisy phone lines, those kinds of things. So before you can fix it, you got to figure out why it's broken. And there's really 2 ways to try and figure out why it's broken or what it's doing. And I'm just going to speak to the SureGuard platform because that's probably one of the more common ones out there today. You'll be able to run what they call a debug on it. So a debug is in real time. It's the information that's getting spit out of the line card. You can take that out and run that out to a laptop or some other serial device, and you can actually bit by bit watch what happens as the line card starts to process the call. And many times you'll see digits that are getting transposed, or they're not in order, or they're missing, and you get a pretty good sense for what's going on. The second most productive way to find it, and actually what SureGuard will normally tell you to do, is to get a recording of that. Actually record that. I did this a couple of years ago at ESX, which showed everybody how to actually do recordings off the receivers. But you're going to have to invest some money. You're going to have to buy some gear that will actually be able to record that inbound call. Because what most of the receiver manufacturers can do is now take that message and run it back through a receiver and see what it does. Although more often than not, if you've been doing this for a long time, you can hear it in your own ear and you can hear it and see what's wrong with it. But
Right.
If you're going to try and diagnose that stuff and really manage it, you're going to have to understand how to record it. The simple way is to buy a phone bridge and a laptop, and away you go. The more complicated way is start recording everything with a traditional voice recorder coming in off your phone switch. There are plenty of central stations that actually record every single call as they come into the receiver so that you can track them. But that's really the only way to do it.
Well, since you're talking about the SureGuard, we had a question that came in. It says, is the profile and format ID on the SureGuard printout a new feature or only on the new receiver model? I do not. This gentleman did not see the information on the current system.
So there's a couple of different ways you can do that. It did become evident or part of the normal software rev. I'm going to say 3 or 4 years ago. It's been around for a while. However, it is a feature that you have to turn on within the actual console application to get that much of the verbose output. But it's fairly easy to do, and as long as your receivers are up to date within the last several years, you shouldn't have a problem. You just have to turn on that additional logging within the console, and away you go.
Great. And Bob, I'm going to give you a question thrown at you, and I'm going to add to it after you're done with the first question. It says it's regarding GPS. What GPS companies have you worked with on your application for your GPS application?
Sure. One of the things that we've done in developing it is enabled it so that we can actually handle the signal coming in straight as an SMS message. So again, we wanted to be as device agnostic as possible with those particular products. With that said, we have a number of customers who are using products from a company called LiPack that has a range of different devices that range from in-dash for vehicles, inside vests for police and fire providers. So there are a number of different products there from that particular company. And then again, this new one, the My 911, is actually a downloadable app that is not going to be so much GPS specific or device specific as it is just an app that you download onto the phone and send in that signal.
Well, with that same thought about and this is my view, I believe we're changing the way we're approaching the traditional security perimeter, where we've been focused on perimeter of a residential or a business property, and is more now going mobile and protecting people and assets. So besides the applications you've outlined in the presentation, which were great, Bob, about you're doing PERS, you're maybe accidents and whatnot, what do you see coming down the road that may be interesting that you're considering about offering through your software?
Well, one of the other products that we're releasing here about the same time with our GPS is actual PSAP database integration with Pitney Bowes managed database. So, the first part of getting that GPS signal is knowing where the person is. The second part to that is knowing which authority to deploy for that particular call. So that's part of what we're looking at here, is not only being able to manage that GPS traffic coming into the signal, but ensuring that we're actually contacting the proper authority that has jurisdiction over that particular pinpointed location to get the help out there that the people need. So there are a wide range of challenges here that are really coming at us with some of these new business requirements and business rules, particularly in that GPS world. And again, that's one of the ways that we're going in and managing that.
I guess that's coming
We've been
down
doing that as well here.
Okay, go ahead.
So we've been doing the mobile stuff here as well. When you start talking about mobile things, that's everything from people to cargo to to elderly to kids, pets, bicycles, you name it. If it can be moved, we can track it. And it's not only just finding out where it is, because it's it can send you the GPS coordinates, but you now have to change your mode of how do you actually dispatch that. How do you actually pick up the phone, call an agency, and we do agency lookup based on lat long and PSAP. Been doing that for a while, but okay, so now you gotta tell a responder that you have a person that looks kind of like this. That's last time we have a location on them. They were heading inside the mall, and they pressed a panic button or a medical button. Now what? And it now changes the dynamic of what the central stations have traditionally done in the past, which is dispatch to a physical location. Now we're dispatching to an actual physical location, but we're looking for the person, not the building.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a different animal.
Right, and that's what's going to be a challenge in the future for everybody operating in this environment. they say, what's worse than a false alarm is a moving false alarm. So it's going to be challenges down the road. And here, we're going to go to another question here. Morgan, this is, you mentioned the Bosch 6600 update to combat VoIP.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on the changes that were made and how the receiver processes the VoIP signal?
Sure. There was an updated set of line card firmware that came out mid last year. And what they do on the Bosch side is, remember, Bosch doesn't handle near as many formats as the SureGuard, so it's not having to do near as much work. So what Bosch is doing is they look at that string, and they look at that and they say, well, we're normally seeing contact ID. If it's not contact ID, we're going to make sure it's contact ID, and so we're going to go ahead and knock the first round of that. We're going to make it send it again. If it sends it again and buys off on it, we'll go ahead and take it. But if it's not contact ID round one, we're going to go ahead and make them do it again. And you see some pretty decent results with that. We see very good results with the Bosch implementation of that. It's been going on a little bit over, probably close to a year now. It's been working pretty good. It's a free update from Bosch. You just got to, you got to download it. You got to update the CPMs. You got to update the line cards, and away you go.
Thank you, Morgan. Bob, here's a question for you. If you are already utilizing BoldNet, is there anything additional a central station needs to offer the mobile apps? And are the apps an alternative to the old legacy for PDAs?
The answer to the first part is yes, there is an add-on module or a new component to the BoldNet application for the mobile devices. We'd be more than happy to talk to that in our customer advocacy group and give you pricing on all of that information. But this is something that's going to replace the ASP.NET BoldNet PDA version that many of our customers are currently using.
Great, thank you on that. And Morgan, here's one. I got two more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Any tips on identifying owners of blocked caller ID phone numbers? Our phone company has not been very helpful with this. When has a phone company ever been helpful? But go ahead.
Yeah, really. Well, one of the problems that you have out there is that there's a concept called ANI, which is automatic number identification, and within the phone company structure, that's different than caller ID. And caller ID has always had the ability for subscribers or owners of phones to be able to block that from being displayed into various systems. But ANI, because ANI was coming from a different source, it was coming as a billing record, typically was never blocked in the past. So, and especially on toll-free numbers where you're paying the toll, ANI was never ever blocked. So even if they have local blocking, you'd still get the ANI information. You wouldn't get the subscriber name or any of that kind of stuff, but we never really cared about that anyhow. We were just looking at the ANI information. But what we've seen is with the advent of many of the sort of voice over IP carriers like Vonage and the cable companies and things like that, what they've done is that they have sort of merged the concept together between ANI and caller ID, and they're blocking both of them, and we just don't get it. I've had some success in calling and dealing with our carriers and saying, look, we're with this handoff that's coming from this other carrier is not sending ANI, and they've been able to work through it. But there's not a lot you can do if you don't have a phone company that you're working with that's going to be able to help you. There's just not. You can't force it. You can't make them do it. But if you can get the phone companies to cooperate, many times they'll get that working for you again. But that's why it breaks down, and that's where the problem lies.
Well, yeah, we had another couple of good questions come in, so I'm going to continue a little bit more here. But Sure. It says, on that same thought, are there any protocol formats or panel manufacturers that are better on a customer VoIP line?
No, I don't believe so. I've seen everything not work, and I've seen everything that does work. I think the right solution, if you're going to be stuck with VoIP, is to transition to something either radio, RF, or either cellular, radio, or IP-based.
Gotcha. And Morgan, from when you enter a central station, and whatnot, are there any things on a day-to-day basis that to mitigate issues within technology problems that may crop up time to time that when you go into that central station, you're looking on a daily basis. What do you do? Is there a process or procedure that you're looking at?
Sure.
Do you do the software? You know what I mean?
No, absolutely, yeah. So, announcer prevention,
right.
Stuff. And so in a small central station where, you've got such a manageable infrastructure that, you can manually go through and look at logs and parse through stuff and then kind of get a sense of what's going on. When you start to scale up, and you're processing 1 million signals a day or, handling, 1,000 inbound alarms an hour, you have to start to automate that. You have to start creating processes that are being done by machines. So, here, we have, I can't even begin to tell you how many dollars invested into network monitoring gear. It's looking at every single device. It's looking at every single service to make sure that it's running. It's looking for errors. We have custom-made software that goes through and looks through receiver logs to look for errors. We have custom-made stuff that's going through telephone logs and looking for repeat calls, missed calls, calls that are coming in repeatedly but not getting processed. We're really being proactive about it, and that's really what you have to do. Is you have to look at all the places that break down and monitor as much as that as you possibly can. And it's expensive and it's time-consuming, but if you're trying to keep the airplane flying all the time, it's really about the only way to do it. And there's plenty of gear out there to do it. It's not like you have to reinvent the wheel, and start from something from scratch. And there's companies that do that for a living, that monitor all this stuff for you. It's kind of like who's monitoring the monitoring station.
Right.
So, if you're serious about it, you got to invest the time and the money into that. But at the end of the day, you're looking for things that didn't work. You're intentionally looking for calls that didn't complete. You're looking for errors that hit receivers. You're looking for network errors. You're looking for, SQL or database, errors that are popping up. And you have to start to manage those and mitigate those.
Right.
And then lastly, a maintenance program. You have to have a maintenance program put in place. You can't just put a database in a rack and expect it to last forever, because it's not. So whether you have database administrators that you're paying on in-house, you're using outside consultants to do that, or a combination of both. The same thing with network stuff. You got to have people that are making sure that things are revved up, software patches are in place. All that has to be done on a regular basis. And the best way to start is to identify every single part and piece in your infrastructure, and then start to go through it and make lists of what can break, what are my errors, how often are patches done. No differently than patch management on your Windows machines. We have very specific patch management requirements here, and depending on the kind of the patch, it would have to be either implemented within days or within months, depending on the type of patch it was. But you have to be proactive about that. You have to put a plan in place to do it.
And what a great segue for the last question. Bob, this is for you. And it's a social media monitoring module that we're talking about here. And I'm a parent, and this gentleman or lady who wrote in, and I can sympathize with them because I have 4 kids, 2 of them are teenagers. And they're always concerned with what their son does on the internet. Could this be used to monitor their activity on Facebook based on predefined keywords?
It can, absolutely. Yeah, that's the whole concept here, is to be able to put in different keywords so that we can have different searches and then weight those keywords or rank them based on how they're coming in. For example, if we have a gun coming in as one of the keywords, but then we also have muscle coming in, or football coming in. That guy's got a gun for an arm. We could actually negate the gun and weight that less so that it wouldn't generate an alarm within the system. So the whole concept is to be able to go in, create a complex number of different keywords and combinations for those keywords that will provide either positive or negative signals within the system and escalate those to alarms in certain situations.
Great. I just want to thank both Morgan and Bob for their wonderful insights. They both did a great job. I wish there was a way that we can give you applause, but we can't do it at this point. But to learn more about diagnosing and solving central station problems, you can attend the full-length seminar at ESX 2012 with Morgan on Wednesday, June 27th at 10:45 a.m. Early bird pricing is $59 for association members and $109 for non-members. And it's time to lock in your registration and savings for ESX 2012 in Nashville, Tennessee. As soon as this webinar is complete, please head over to esxweb.com and register for this year's event. The recording of this webinar will be available on esxweb.com soon if you'd like to review it again. Thank you again for attending, and we'll see you June 25th through the 29th in Nashville. This concludes the webinar.